So the agenda for today's webinar, which is again toward a learning organization with Agile development, is that I first want to clarify the context, and the context more from my personal background, why am I interested in that topic, and then on a more general background, so what is Agile providing here as learning framework maybe. And because we are talking about, well, implementing a learning organization with Agile development, which means that organization has to somehow become more agile. Agile transition is one of the topics as well. Then learning as a big topic, I want to talk about how learning and change relate, so what this implies, then how learning in organizations is very specific, and we'll want to wrap up with the summary. And I think I have to activate the slides. Okay, so starting with the context. And of my personal context, as I said already, which is what I want to start with, why am I interested in that topic? Some of it has already provided by Jessica. So one of the things is that I have a background in education and teaching, so it's not only learning for myself, but also to help others learn. Then the Master in Engineering, and just recently, actually it's just 2 years ago, I made another Master in Business Coaching and Change Management, which is again, kind of for me, I want to keep learning, and on the other hand, I also want to help organizations to learn. So this is kind of the background for that talk, really. And besides that, yeah, as you heard already, I'm working as a coach trainer consultant. Now, the other part of the context, which is, well, we are talking about Agile development helping an organization to become a learning organization. I want to look into what does Agile really provide in terms of learning. And for me, at the core of this is this learning cycle, which consists of plan, do, inspect, adapt. Yes, that's very related to the Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act. It's a little bit different, yet still it's something that applies on very different, specifically time frames in Agile, and you can see this more or less everywhere. So in Agile, for example, people work in iterations or sprints if you work with Scrum. So you plan what is your goal, for example, for the next 2 weeks. Then you do that stuff. During those 2 weeks, what you plan for, then you come to the inspect part where you look at the result and kind of, evaluate if this is actually what you planned for. And then the adapt part comes, and that's the main part of the learning, where we retrospect and look at how did we manage to achieve our goals, or what did we do that we were not able to achieve those goals, and what can we learn from that in order to get better when we start in the next round, so for the next planning, for the next iteration. So this is maybe for most of you kind of obvious. However, this, as I said before, that's something that's really at the core of Agile, and it's something that you see in different time frames and you see all over the place. And I just want to give you a few more examples. So another example on a different time frame, so the one we just saw was on 2 weeks, and now the different time frame would be like 1 day, which is like a daily Scrum, daily stand-up meeting, where exactly that same kind of learning is happening. So on the one hand, we look back and inspect what did we achieve since the last time we were in that daily meeting. So that's the inspect part. Then we also look at forward. So what do we plan for till the next time we are in the daily Scrum? And then we also look at, do we need to adapt in some ways? Do we have to learn something? because we might not be able to reach that goal. So that's the typical question where always, which is always referred to, are there any impediments or what's hindering me from achieving that goal, and therefore what do we need to do in order to still make it happen. So also here you can see that learning cycle and the stuff that's happening in between, so from one day to the next, that's the do part. So now that was the 1 day time frame, but we have it in an even still shorter time frame, which is if we look at test-driven development, then the plan part is developing a test first. Well, this is actually the goal. Then we develop the code against that. Then we inspect if the test is passing. And then we look, what can we make differently? What can we improve? Where can we make things more effective? Or what can we optimize in the code? Or maybe you can just summarize that with refactoring. And what can we learn from that for the next tests and code we are writing? So really that plan, do, inspect, adapt is inherently embedded in Agile development. So learning is really part of Agile. And without learning, I would say you are not doing anything Agile. So that's kind of the context, so my personal one and Agile in general. Now looking at the thing when we are saying, well, toward a learning organization with Agile development, so somehow we have to use that Agile stuff. So I want to take a peek at Agile transition. And for Agile transition, first of all, I want to take a look at, well, why do you want to do that anyway? And this is now from my experience, what I'm seeing with my clients. So one of the things that I have seen really many times is failed projects. So that there was development underway for a long time, but no real result visible, and people really got concerned if the money is spent well, and therefore they decided we need to have a different approach where we can see the results quickly and also learn from what's happening. So failed projects is one. Another thing is more maybe classic reasons, things that you read more often about. If people talk about why they do Agile, for example, because you cannot stabilize and fix the requirements up front because the market is changing very much. Another thing is that the time pressure is very high, so time to market is the thing, and so it's better to come out with a few functionalities, but come out with those and deliver them quickly and frequently in order to maybe penetrate the market or just, again, learn from the market experience. Then lack of quality, which relates actually to the failed project. It doesn't have to go that far that it's really failed, but that's sometimes another reason that people feel like the focus on quality is not high enough, and with Agile, by focusing on something that's working every day or with every iteration or with every test that's implemented, that's another reason to decide for maybe taking an Agile approach. And then there's another thing which might sound funny, maybe, is marketing, and both internal and external marketing. So the internal marketing is sometimes that there's no trust in the project or in the development, and by being able to show results frequently, this is also helping to get a better stand inside your corporation. Then we have a different bunch of reasons which are like high risk. So we are entering a new market, new domain. We are using a new technology, and the risk is just really, really high. Could also be like with distributed and or large projects, and therefore we really want to eliminate the risk by absolutely knowing where we are at the moment and measuring by something that's working, and not really, introducing a lot of concepts and papers where we never really know where we are at. So what is really the status? And finally, which is also just state of the art, or because people think that's hype or that's the thing to do, and that might be another reason why people decide for following an Agile approach. Now the question is how to go through that transition. And I see